Aloha, everyone. I'm Tamara McKay, host and founder of Red Time Stories, and we're here to share stories and talk about things that have to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness while protecting our First Amendment rights. We have a lot of great things planned for the show and this platform, and looking forward to hearing stories from people from all over, from Hawaii to Florida. We want to determine whether stories we hear are fact or fiction, locally and nationally, expose some corruption, share some solutions to those who need another avenue to be involved, and keeping up with the theme of America, which is it's the home of the brave and the land of the free. I'm looking forward to many segments that we're going to be implementing, such as street talking from all over the nation and having people go out in what we call the red zone from all over, hearing stories, hearing concerns, having those questions, to help with the content and answer a lot of worries and questions and put some rumors to rest. That's why we're talking story here. So please don't hesitate to contact me with some content that you would like to hear. Send me a 3-minute video. Would love to post those of you guys from all over. Just so that I'll give you the contact information at the end, but I'll give you some information now, which is writeasred@pm.me. That's right, RIGHTASRED @pm.me. So, sorry that we started late. First show, we had a lot of technical difficulties, but we're going to be working out the bugs. We're looking forward to doing weekly shows on Thursday at 3 p.m. And now, let's see, since Hawaii doesn't change that time on the East Coast, it'll be 6 hours ahead, I do believe. So that's 9 o'clock Eastern time. We're super excited to get this going and find some common ground and find some solutions. And there are solutions out there. We just have to start working together and talking together. So without further ado, we're just going to kind of head on out. I'm very excited about my first guest, which is another solution that maybe a lot of people are not educated about. I know a lot of people think that who have conservative values, that they feel that they're stuck to the Republican Party. And right now, there's a lot of issues within the Republican Party, and it seems that we are having issues nationwide with infiltration or corruption, questioning what our values are. Maybe we're not winning elections that we need to. And so people are looking, and they've been asking me quite a bit, which is another reason why I wanted to start Red Time Stories, is give you guys some guidance on other organizations that really can impact this nation. And so my first guest is Brett Kolbus, and he is one of the leaders in the Convention of States for Hawaii State. He's been recognized all over by Mark Meckler. Convention of States is joining the states together in order to make a difference with the articles within the United States. And he's going to elaborate on that. I don't want to go too much into there because he's going to make it very simple and very, very clear for you how you can get involved and how you can make a difference. So without further ado, I'm going to play you an intro video that'll give you a little bit of an idea about Convention of States. And when we come back, we're going to have Brett Kolbus on with us, and he'll let you know a little bit more about Convention of States. So stay tuned.
The United States Constitution was written to form a more perfect union that would enable checks and balances to prevent a bloody revolution from being a necessary measure to abolish tyranny. Excellent though it was, Colonel George Mason feared the national government might one day end in a tyrannical aristocracy. The rights of the people needed to be secured against potential corruption at the national level. One of the solutions the framers decided upon can be found in Article 5, which gives state legislators the authority to call a convention that bypasses federal legislators to amend the Constitution. That gives we the people the opportunity to make some long overdue structural adjustments. Maybe term limits would be a good place to start. Here's how the process works. Citizens request their state legislators to pass a bill called an application, with operative language identical in each state. These legislators of the states then pass the application. Generally, only a simple majority is needed. Congress shall, by law, call a convention of the states as soon as it receives applications from 2/3 of the state legislatures. That's 34 states. Delegates chosen by the state legislatures attend the convention. Each state only gets one vote at the convention, but they can send as many delegates to represent the state as they so choose. Amendments are proposed, debated, and voted upon at the convention. Finally, ratification takes place in the states. Each amendment must be ratified by 3/4 of the states in order to become part of the U.S. Constitution. But what about a runaway convention? Let's get a reality check. Like constitutional law scholar Robert G. Nadelson says, there are far more political and legal constraints on a runaway convention than on a runaway Congress. The convention delegates, also called commissioners, are bound to the will of their state legislatures. If they don't vote as their states demand, they get recalled. They might even get sent to prison. Furthermore, a full 3/4 of the state legislatures, we're talking 38 state legislatures, must ratify each and every amendment in order for it to become part of the U.S. Constitution. Even Alexander Hamilton and Abraham Lincoln, who favored national government, emphasized that Article 5 gives states authority over the national government. Hamilton writes that national rulers have no option upon the subject. The words of Article 5 are peremptory. The Congress shall call a convention. And Lincoln says the convention mode seems preferable in that it allows amendments to originate with the people themselves. Article 5 Convention of the States is a safe route to stopping federal overreach. Civilizations rise and fall. Let's be a civilization that saw the cycle of collapse coming and broke it.
And we're back. Awesome. Awesome video. So everybody welcome Brett Colbus. And Brett, you want to kind of explain a little bit further? I mean, that video was pretty telling about article Convention of States and how it affects the articles. Please elaborate more on that.
Well, aloha, Tamara. Thanks for having me on your inaugural Right is Red Time Stories, excuse me. It's surely an honor to be here. I'd like to give just a little bit of background about myself. I was born and raised in Johnson City, New York. It's a small town, small patriotic town in the south central part of upstate New York, just minutes over the Pennsylvania border. I joined the Navy in 1981, retired as a Senior Chief Petty Officer, which is the second highest enlisted ranking in the Navy. I first came to Hawaii in the late 80s, fell in love with it because of how welcoming the people were, and of course the weather. So, like most people come here for. I returned in 1996 and made it our home with my wife Marie and son TJ. And for those in Hawaii, my son went to Radford. So, Radford, go. After retiring, when I really started to get involved and started to notice what's going around in our local, state, and federal governments, and it was very concerning. I spent 26 years in the Navy defending the Constitution, and my eyes were open to what was really happening. It was about that same time I started listening to Mark Levin. Anybody that knows Mark Levin, he's a true patriot. So he had a big influence on me. And it was one of his shows when he started announcing about Convention of States that led me to it. My first involvement in politics started with the Honolulu Tea Party back in 2010. In that movement, which one of our founders, Mark Meckler, was very influential in because he founded the Tea Party Patriots. Then I got involved with the local Republican Party as a precinct president and worked my way up to be the Honolulu County chairman, and where I served for the last 6 years until the recent county convention when I turned over the helm to Steve Lipscomb. During that time, Convention of States was just beginning, and when Mark Levin gave out their website, I immediately looked them up and joined. In my first call with State Director Mark White, He asked me to be the state grassroots coordinator, and we can just say the rest is history. And we've been involved with convention states here locally and nationally since. So as the video tells you, under Article 5 of our Constitution, there's two ways to amend it. First way is Congress can do it through amendments, and that's where most of our amendments have. In fact, all of our amendments have come from that we have currently in the Constitution. But, you know, Congress is never going to propose an amendment that's going to rein in their own power. That's just never going to happen. And, you know, our founding fathers were geniuses when they put this in. In fact, it was 2 days before the actual signing of the Constitution on September 15th of that George Mason proposed the second method that they put in the Constitution, is whereby 3/4 of the state's legislature, which is 34, if they sign on to a similar resolution calling for an Article 5 Convention of States to propose amendments, then the states can gather in a, like I said, a convention of states to propose amendments that would go out to the states for ratification. Any amendments come out of the convention would go to the states for ratification, essentially bypassing, you know, the swamp in DC. They have no control over that. So, you know, and really the mission of Convention of States, while our first goal is to get to 34 states to sign on a similar resolution. We're currently at 19. I think we'll get 3 or 4 more states this year. It looks like Iowa may be the next one coming up. There's a lot of great there's a lot of states that are on the verge of passing it, so we're very hopeful. But the real mission of Convention of States is to build the largest and most active group of citizen activists that the world has ever seen for purpose of restoring the balance of power in America, whether it be local, state, federal, all levels of government are in need of repair. And on a national level, we currently have over 7 million citizen activists in every legislative district in the country. And you know, like I said, our primary goal is for all the 50 states to the grassroots activists to influence their state legislators to pass a similar resolution calling for that Article 5 Convention of States to propose amendments to the Constitution. And we're not putting out specific amendments. We've designed 3 subject areas that we're looking at. One is oppose fiscal restraints on the federal government. What does that mean? How about having the federal government actually do a balanced budget amendment? Most states have a balanced budget amendment. I mean, even in your own home, you balance your budget before you go out and spend other things, and you don't spend when money you don't have like they do in the federal government. Another thing is making them use generally accepted accounting practices. Right now, the government doesn't use any accounting practices as far as I can tell. So, you know, it's sort of and it's, you know, you see that in our over $30 trillion debt that we have. The other part is limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. You know, when our founders created the Constitution and the federal government they created, there was no EPA, there was no Department of Education, there was Department of Transportation. All this stuff was expected to be handled at the state level. Always. That's how federalism works. So, but as we've seen over the years, our Constitution has, or at least the power that the states had over the years, has been eroded. And then the last one is term limits of office for federal officials, bureaucrats, and members of Congress. I think we've seen in the last 10, 15 years, and especially in 2020 and 2021 with the whole COVID pandemic, when you find out that Dr. Fauci has been in his position for over 40 years, unelected bureaucrats in a lot of these departments are making rules that affect everybody across the nation. We kid ourselves. We say, there's more rule. They rule us from our from the bedroom to the bathroom, to the outhouse, and you just see it keep on going. So
Right. Well, one of the things that's out there, I mean, that people generally get concerned about, and one is there's another organization that kind of butts heads with Convention of States. Maybe you can elaborate more on that relationship and what they say, and straighten out that story between that organization and Convention of States, and who is more effective, or are they just, do they have different goals?
I'm not sure which specific organization. I don't know if you're talking about John Birch Society or
The,
Eagle Forum.
yeah, the John Birch Society primarily.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of there's over 250 left-leaning organizations that are supported by George Soros that is in opposition to us. But yeah, it's a little confusing with the John Birch Society. You would think a organization that's supposed to be in charge, is their goal is to keep the Constitution, or make the federal government follow the Constitution, which they do, but is against us. But yeah, there's a lot of misinformation that's put out there. Runaway convention, telling us that the founding fathers didn't have the authority to create the Constitution in the first place. But that's all we got. If you go to the conventionofstates.com website, you can find all the information you want. And there's a great book called The Article 5 by Robert Nadelson, who is probably the premier legal constitutional expert on Article 5 and the Constitution as a whole. He wrote a great book, The Law of Article 5, and he goes through and he lays out all the things about an Article 5 convention, how it's been used over 40 times in our history, and he also debunks in that book some of the misinformation that's out there. But in this age of social media and everything, unfortunately, because of our educational system that has essentially stopped teaching our children how to be critical thinkers and actually do the research. They're teaching them other stuff. So
Okay. So you stated there was 19 states now that have signed over for Convention of States, and there's a couple more coming up, correct? Yeah.
we think so. Yeah, there's a couple on the verge.
And then how many in order to make this happen?
Well, we need 34 states to sign on to the similar resolution. Like I said, we got 19 now. We think New Hampshire, Virginia, North Carolina, New Mexico, Iowa, South Dakota are probably on the verge. They've at least passed in one chamber of their state legislature. And then there's a bunch of states that have active legislation this year. So yeah, as Mark Levin says, as we start getting closer to the 34, more and more groups are going to come out in opposition to it, with all the typical misinformation and disinformation about it. So
Okay. So basically, until the other states clear, there's 15 more to go. How long do you think this process is going to take?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know. Our founding fathers designed this. This is not supposed to be a overnight flash in the pan type of of a process. It is a long process. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in all the states that have not signed on to the resolution. Because so, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, but we are hopeful that it will be sooner than that. And like I said, it's a slog process. You gotta first, you gotta get the teams together in the states. They gotta be able to influence their legislators, and then get the resolutions passed by the state legislators. I will reiterate, this was never meant to be a one-time deal, an instant event like an election every year. This takes a long drawn out process, which was the intent of the founding fathers. They understood that there may come a need for it, but they also understood that it needs to be done. It should not be an instant fix. I mean, technically, if you want to think about it, every day Congress goes into session, they're essentially holding a convention of states and could pass resolutions out of there or could pass amendments to be ratified out of there any day that they're in session.
Gotcha. So with that being said, I know that you've I really want to go in and play the video that we have of you and your involvement, and share with the audience that of what you have accomplished, and then talk more about that.
Okay.
I'm just looking forward to networking with all the like-minded people, patriots that are doing really God's work to try to save our country. I spent 26 years in the military. I understand what it means to be supportive and defend the Constitution. And, I don't want our country to turn into a socialist country. So probably like most people, as Mark Beckler always says, I first heard about it through Mark Levin and knowing that he was coming out with his book. And then it was like 2014, 2015. I started looking for COS online, see what was going on, and found it, and got in touch with the state director, Mark White, who, we were the first two on board for Convention of States in Hawaii, and, it's been a slog ever since. I remember Mark Levin at the 2019 one. Always a powerful speaker. I really follow him a lot, and I like Steve Dace. Him coming out in support of Convention of States now. I've listened to him for quite a while, and I like his message and understanding of what we need to do. But all the speakers are going to be great. They're speaking our language. If you need to get involved, if you want to make sure our country is safe for your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and that they don't end up in a state or a country that's socialist, government-run, statist, whatever the terminology, you need to get involved. Because, as Mark Levin once said, our generation is going to leave the next generation less off than we were left from our parents and grandparents. So it's very important to get back to our roots of the country and make sure that we continue to be that shining light on the hill for other people to come and.
That's awesome. Maybe go ahead.
Yeah, that was that was last year's Liberty Summit that Convention of States puts on, and about 10 of us traveled to Orlando. That was in Orlando, Florida, to participate in I think it was 3 or 4 day event, which was totally awesome. There was over 600 like-minded patriots in the Convention of States movement that were leaders in the movement that were attending. Convention of States Action Hawaii, which is our local organization here, which I'm the grassroots coordinator of, and Mark White is our state director. We boast a grassroots network of over 8,000 grassroots activists representing every legislative district in our state. And as I said, the mission is to build an engaged army of self-governing activists, and we're doing that. We want to see self-governance and liberty flourish in the nation. We believe the only way this will happen is if good people like you, me, and anybody out there listening that wants to potentially make the biggest change in our country to get involved in the political and cultural battle. I mean, it is a battle. You see it every day in the news, from transgenderism to the latest one I just saw is that the president is going to add an additional fee on home buyers to pay for that. Monies will go to pay for home buyers that are financially challenged to help them pay their mortgage. That's straight up socialism as far as I'm concerned. So
right. I know that we had Mark Meckler out here, and he was well received. And this being a blue state, because they relate, the majority of people think that Convention of States is primarily Republican. Can you clarify the stories behind what party affiliation that Convention of States has?
Absolutely. Convention of States is nonpartisan. This is not a political, this is not either party issue. This is an American issue. I don't think there's anybody that you ask today, if you ask anybody on the street if they think the federal government is out of control, I don't think anybody would say yes. There's so much going on that affects so much of us that's being driven from the top down, that this, like I said, this is not any sort of party issue. This is a constitutional issue and an American issue that everybody needs to really get involved in. And even here in deep blue state Hawaii, which as you know, we have Democrats that support our resolution. We've had Democrats every year since 2016 that have signed on to our resolution. Now, part of the problem is we can't get a hearing in the resolution, but that's the political game they play at the state capitol. Just this year alone, we had Corey Chun, who was one of our prime sponsors out of District 35 here on Oahu, and then Trace Amato. I think she's on Kauai, or maybe she's on Maui, I'm not sure. In the House, sponsored our resolution, or at least signed on as a supporter of our resolution. And then in the Senate, we had Senator Wakai, Democrat, and Senator Dela Cruz, Democrat, support our resolution. So, and like I said, since 2016, we've had Democrats support our resolution, because this is not a one party. This is not either party a resolution. This is, like I said, this is an American resolution to help save our country.
Right. And one of the things too that I know that adds credibility to organizations, so that people feel more comfortable about it, is those who sponsor it. I know that there is such a huge list of people who are in the public eye that support Convention of States. Can you please tell the audience of some of those people who support and sponsor Convention of States?
Well, it's really a who's who in the conservative movement. I mean, you got obviously Mark Levin, who's a big supporter. You probably, if you haven't read his book, The Liberty Amendments, that's a great read. We've had Senator Coburn, God rest his soul, former senator from Kansas or Oklahoma. He was big supporter and was one of our key spokesperson, all the way down to the social media people and political pundits, anything from Sean Hannity to uh, oh shoot, Charlie Kirk. We have Steve Dace, as I mentioned in there. Alan West is a big supporter.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Huckabee. Yeah, there's a lot. You can see the supporters at the Convention of States website. Just go in there and click on supporters, and it will show a whole bunch that are in there. Sean Hannity's a supporter. Yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's really a who's who, and more are coming on every. I would say every year we get 2 or 3 more big supporters as part of our movement. But and they're getting I mean, even Tucker Carlson is a supporter now. And if you saw the interview with Mark Meckler a month ago, it was the question he always got when he goes to events from our Convention of States Grassroots Army. Why aren't you supporting Convention of States yet? Why aren't you doing it? And a lot of our people, a lot of our members do that when they go to these events with people that are prominent in the political culture. Pete Hegseth's on there from Fox News. So yeah, there's quite an eclectic group of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know when I went to the convention, that I was so impressed and so moved by the camaraderie that was in Convention Estates and the unity from people who were from all over the country with a common goal, and that was to protect the rights of America. I mean, there was absolutely no ill feeling. It was hugs and everybody, the patriotic feeling within. I don't know how many people were there, Brett. I mean,
it was over 600.
Yeah, and it was just amazing in the presentation. And I do have to say the internal workings of Convention Estates is very spot on and organized and in tune with their communication with their members in the direction that they're heading. And but I do get questions, a lot about not just the membership, but how people can really help move this along. What can they do in order to help make the legislators vote? What can they do to influence that, to move this faster? Because everybody feels like once 2024 comes up, we're going to totally lose our country.
Yeah, well, that's the tough part. At least here in Hawaii, the best thing that they can do is, if they haven't already signed our petition, sign our petition. Go to conventionestates.com. Go to the Take Action tab. It'll ask you to sign the petition. You can get involved in as many leadership and just volunteer activist items you can positions you can apply for. But when you sign our petition, and an email letter is sent to your state legislators, both in the House and the Senate, basically telling them that you support Convention of States and you would like them to. And then just, excuse me, start contacting them once a week, once a month, especially when they're in session. We always put out information to our members when our resolution is filed, the resolution number, how to contact their legislators, and we just got to put the pressure on it. Make the phone call to your legislator, show up at a neighborhood board and ask them why they're not supporting Convention of States or why they didn't support it this year. And it really takes the grassroots army to influence them, because legislators, all they're looking for is their next vote. And if you got four or five people to show up at a neighborhood board meeting and ask them, and for couple hundred people send them an email or a text message or post on their social media about it, they're going to start getting the word. And this year, as we've done every year, we go down there to the state capitol for about 3 or 4 weeks, passing out information, talking to legislators, talking to their staff, building those relationships. That's what starts it. Building the relationships with your legislator, and then just encouraging them to sign on to petition. We got plenty of information we can provide them on various things, and we do that every year at the beginning of the session. There's plenty of handouts that we've provided them talking about this stuff. And one thing we've found out over the years is a lot of these legislators just don't realize how powerful they are based on the U.S. Constitution. They are the only ones that have this power in the state, in our U.S. Constitution. It wasn't given to the governors. It wasn't given to mayors. It was given to the state legislators to be able to call a convention of states and essentially bypassing Congress.
Yeah. So, with that being said, how can people get involved with convention states? And once you give that contact information and what they can do, I think we should give a closing, play that last video, and letting people know more.
Well, absolutely, Tamara. The easiest way is go to conventionofstates.com. If you scroll down on the main page, if you've already signed the petition, there's a link with our state flag on there, that a link to the state leaders. You can call me. I think it has my phone number and email address. You can reach out to me directly via email at Brett, BRETT, .Kulbis, KULBIS, at cosaction.com. If you've already signed a petition, you probably received an email from us and a phone call saying thanks for signing the petition. Go back into your folders. Hopefully you saved it. Find that. It has contact information. And that's the way you can get a hold of us. And we're around. I've been around for a while, so we're at the gun shows. We're at the we're going to be looks like we're going to be in the Kailua 4th of July parade this year over on Oahu. But I'd like to leave your audience with just a couple thoughts. The time is now. Our duty as citizens is to stand in times such as these. We cannot lament the current state of our nation, but it's our duty as American stewards and self-governing citizens to fix it. Tom Coburn, God rest his soul, made this quote: "Doing nothing gives us a predictable ending. What we tolerate, we empower." And then I really got to ask this question: what are you willing to stand for? Mm-hmm. Your children, your grandchildren, are you willing to stand for your children's and grandchildren's freedom? Are you frustrated with big government status quo in Washington, D.C. and want to do something about it? If so, you need to go to Convention of States, sign our petition if you haven't, reach out to us and get involved. We got plenty of places where you can get involved, and it takes a team effort to do this. And like I said, this is a slog and how it happens, but everybody can play their part, even if it's just making one phone call or sending one email a day, a week, or a month to your legislator, and then showing up at the Capitol, hopefully if we ever get a hearing. So my last thought is, sorry, this is what Mark Levin says, and he said this at our meeting back in October. There's only one movement standing up to the destruction of America, and that's the Convention of States. And he cannot be any more true than that.
I agree. And with that, I just want to thank everybody and for being patient and forgiving for the technical difficulties that we had in the beginning. We're going to have Brett back, and really put, educate you about convention states as well as other programs and stories throughout the United States to help everyone get on the same page, the same team, and save our freedoms and save our country. I really appreciate everybody joining us here on Red Time Stories. Again, I'm Tamara McKay, and you can find me on Facebook at Red
Aloha.
Time Stories, and you can find me on Instagram as well. And we're updating our web page, which is redtimestories.org as well. So with that, aloha, everyone. Thank you. Please stay tuned and for our ending video with Convention of States. Please join. We need to save our country in any way, shape, or form that we can. Aloha.
The federal government has become a lumbering giant. With each passing year, it gets bigger and scarier. In 1965, Washington was $761 billion big. In 2016, it was $3.5 trillion, 5 times the size. If the government spent only the money it collected in taxes, that would be one thing. But it always spends more, which is why we're $20 trillion in debt. That's 13 zeros. Count them, 13. But the crazy spending isn't even the worst of it. Washington is involved in every part of our lives. Think about anything you do, from driving your car to buying your groceries to mowing your lawn. Whatever it is, your education, your job, your health, the government has its hands on your shoulder, if not on your throat. As a congressman and senator for 14 years, I know this only too well. So how do we cut this giant down to size? Is it even possible? Yes. And the amazing thing is, the answer is right in front of us. The Founding Fathers, in their wisdom, foresaw the situation we find ourselves in today. They wrote into the Constitution a way to repair Washington, not from the inside, because that will never happen, but from the outside, where it might. It's right there in Article 5. Most people are familiar with the first part. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. All 27 amendments we have now started this way. Congress proposed them, and at least 3/4 of the states ratified them. But is this the only way to amend the Constitution? Well, let's read the next clause. It says that Congress, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. Did you catch that? Congress must call a convention to amend the Constitution if 2/3 of the states, that's 34 states, demand it. The time has come to demand it. The time has come to propose amendments that will restore meaningful limits on federal power and authority. The time has come for a convention of states. Here's how it would work. Once the 34 states call a convention, all 50 states send a delegate to represent their interest. For any constitutional amendments proposed, each state gets one vote. And an amendment only passes out of the convention and to the states for ratification if a majority of the state's delegates vote in the affirmative. In this scenario, Congress has no say. It is completely in the hands of the states, which means it's a whole lot closer to the hands of the people. We've never once amended the Constitution this way, but that doesn't mean we can't. But you might ask, doesn't this open the door to rewriting the entire Constitution? Antonin Scalia, the late Supreme Court Justice, acknowledged this risk, but regarded it as a minimal and reasonable one. Why? Because to be ratified, a proposed amendment would need the approval of 38 states. That's a high bar. 38 states would never agree to something radical like abolishing freedom of speech. The founders, Scalia said, knew the Congress would be unwilling to give attention to many issues the people are concerned with, particularly those involving restrictions on the federal government's own power. So they provided the Convention of States as a remedy. This should not be a partisan left-right, Democrat-Republican issue. This should be a who controls your life issue, you or the government. Today, politicians can turn your life upside down on a whim, kind of like King George in 1775. Being at the mercy of distant, disconnected rulers was why the American Revolution was fought in the first place. But we don't need a revolution. We have Article 5. So what amendments might a convention of states propose to limit Washington's power? Term limits for one, and no one should be in Congress for 20 or 30 years. The only people who disagree have been in Congress for 20 or 30 years. And how about a limit on taxes, spending, and borrowing? Since you began this video, the national debt has gone up $8.4 million. Here's one more idea. A constitutional amendment that Congress can't exempt itself from the laws it passes, something it's done dozens of times, from insider trading to Obamacare. Now, I don't believe a convention of states will solve all of America's problems, but the founders put it in the Constitution for a reason. They knew a time would come when Washington would become so big and so intrusive that only we, the people, could cut it down to size. That time is now. I'm Jim DeMint for Prager University. Thank you for